My phone lit up with a text from my mom that made my blood run cold. "Don't call me, come over. We're done." Just 9 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about family. What happened next turned my entire world upside down in ways I never saw coming. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my coffee getting cold in my hand, trying to make sense of what I was reading. My first instinct was to call her immediately, to fix whatever had gone wrong, to apologize for something I didn't even understand yet. But something inside me, something that had been building for years, whispered a different response. I typed back 2 simple words, "I get it," and hit send before I could change my mind. What you need to understand is that this wasn't just any ordinary family disagreement. This was the culmination of a decade of being the family's invisible backbone, the one who showed up with money every time there was a crisis, the daughter who sacrificed her own dreams to keep everyone else afloat. I had poured over $400,000 into my family over the years, covering everything from my mom's surgery bills to my younger sister's gambling debts to keeping my dad's struggling hardware store from going under. The rain was getting heavier outside my apartment window, matching the storm brewing inside my chest. I looked around at the life I had built, the framed designs on my walls, the awards from advertising competitions, the sleek workspace where I created campaigns for national brands. None of it had ever impressed my family the way my sister's dead-end jobs at various diners somehow did, or the way my dad's failing hardware store was treated like some sacred legacy. But here's what they didn't know. What I had been keeping to myself for the past 6 months while I made some major decisions about my future. I had sold my graphic design agency to a national marketing firm for $2.3 million, a deal that closed just 3 weeks before my mom sent that text. I hadn't told anyone in my family because I knew exactly what would happen. They would immediately start planning how to spend my money, creating new emergencies that only I could solve. As I sat there watching the rain streak down my window, my phone started buzzing with incoming calls. First my mom, then my dad, then my sister Emily, then my mom again. The voicemails started piling up within minutes, and I could already imagine what they were saying without listening. They had just realized that the monthly automatic transfers I had set up for them, the ones that covered my mom's medication costs, my dad's store lease, and my sister's car payment, had all been canceled that morning. I had done it right before my mom's text arrived, finally taking the step I should have taken years ago, cutting off the financial support that had turned me into an ATM rather than a daughter. The timing was pure coincidence, but it must have looked like an immediate retaliation to them. What happened in the next 72 hours would reveal truths about my family that I had been avoiding for my entire adult life, truths that would force me to choose between the family I was born into and the life I deserved to live. Growing up in Portland, we looked like the perfect middle-class American family from the outside. My dad owned a hardware store that had been in business for 30 years, a neighborhood fixture where people came for advice on home repairs and community gossip. My mom worked part-time at the local library, always volunteering for every bake sale and school event, the kind of mother everyone thought was absolutely devoted to her children. My sister Emily, 4 years younger than me, was the golden child who could do no wrong in their eyes. She was outgoing where I was quiet, spontaneous where I was methodical, charming where I was serious. From the time we were kids, it was clear that Emily was the favorite, the one who got away with everything while I was held to impossible standards. I remember being 14 when I first realized how different their expectations were for us. Emily had failed 3 classes that semester, spending her time partying with older kids instead of studying, and my parents barely scolded her. "She's just finding herself," my mom said with a gentle smile. Meanwhile, I had gotten a B+ in advanced math, my only non-A grade, and my dad didn't speak to me for 2 days. That pattern continued through high school and into college. I worked my way through community college, taking graphic design classes while working nights at a print shop to pay tuition. My parents made it clear they couldn't afford to help me with college expenses, which I accepted without complaint. Then Emily decided she wanted to go to a fancy culinary school in Seattle, and suddenly my parents found $25,000 for her first-year tuition. When I asked my mom about it, she got defensive in that way she always did when confronted with the obvious favoritism. "Emily needs more support, Nicole. You've always been so independent and capable," she said, as if my independence was something I chose rather than something forced on me. That moment taught me that being strong and self-sufficient didn't earn respect in my family. It just meant they expected more from me while giving less. I graduated with my associate degree and started freelancing, building a client base one small business at a time. My designs were good, really good, and word spread quickly in Portland's tight-knit creative community. Within 3 years, I had enough steady clients to quit my print shop job and focus full-time on my own agency. My parents came to my office opening, stayed for 20 minutes, and left early because Emily needed a ride to her shift at a diner. Emily had dropped out of culinary school after 8 months, wasting most of that $25,000 my parents had scraped together. She bounced from job to job, never staying anywhere longer than a few months, always having some drama with a coworker or a boss who didn't understand her creative spirit. And every single time, my parents made excuses for her, cushioned her falls, told her she was special, and the world just wasn't ready for her talents. Meanwhile, I was landing contracts with major brands, creating campaigns that won regional advertising awards, building something real and sustainable. My dad's only comment when I showed him a feature about my work in a local business magazine was, "That's nice, but when are you going to settle down and start a real family?" As if my thriving business and independence meant nothing compared to finding a husband and having kids. The first time they asked me for money, I was 26 years old. My mom called crying, saying she needed surgery for a herniated disc, and their insurance wouldn't cover the full cost. They needed $12,000, and they needed it within 2 weeks. I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money the next day, wiping out most of my savings that I had been building to expand my business and hire my first employee. "We'll pay you back, sweetheart. I promise," my mom said, her voice thick with gratitude and tears. I believed her because I wanted to believe that this would be the moment they finally saw me, really saw me, as someone valuable and generous and worthy of their appreciation. But the payback never came, and within a month, they stopped mentioning it entirely, as if the debt had simply evaporated into the air we breathed. 6 months later, my dad called with his own emergency. The hardware store was struggling, big box retailers were killing his business, and he was 3 months behind on rent. He needed $30,000, or he'd lose everything he'd built over 3 decades. Once again, I emptied my accounts, postponed hiring staff, put my growth plans on hold. Once again, I got promises of repayment that dissolved into silence. But here's what really hurt, what cut deeper than the money ever could. 2 weeks after I bailed out the hardware store, I stopped by for a family dinner and overheard my dad talking to his brother on the phone. "Yeah, business has been tough, but we're managing. You know me, I always figure it out," he said, his voice full of pride and self-reliance. No mention of me, no acknowledgement of the lifeline I'd thrown him. I was invisible even in my own rescue. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, like nothing you do is ever quite enough, leave a like on this video. And tell me in the comments, have you ever helped someone who never acknowledged your sacrifice? Because what happened next made me realize I wasn't alone in feeling this way, but I was definitely alone in my family. Then came Emily's disasters, and they were many and they were expensive. First, she got involved with online poker, convincing herself she had a system that would make her rich. Within 4 months, she was $45,000 in debt, with loan sharks calling my parents' house at all hours making threats. My parents were terrified, begging me to help before Emily got hurt. I paid off her gambling debts with money I had been saving to buy my first house. Emily's response when I handed her the bank confirmation was, "Thanks, sis. You're a lifesaver," said with the same casual tone someone might use when you pass them the salt at dinner. No real gratitude, no acknowledgement of the magnitude of what I'd just done, no promise to change her behavior or get help for her obvious addiction problem. My parents took her to one counseling session, decided it was too expensive to continue, and declared her cured. "She's learned her lesson," my mom assured me with complete confidence. 3 months later, Emily was gambling again, just smaller amounts this time, being more careful to hide it. When I confronted my mom about enabling Emily's destructive behavior, she got angry with me for being judgmental and unsupportive. The pattern was set, and it repeated endlessly over the next several years. Emily needed a car, I bought it. The hardware store needed new inventory to stay competitive, I funded it. My mom needed expensive medication not covered by insurance, I paid for it. Every crisis, every emergency, every financial gap that opened up in my family's life, I filled it without question or complaint. And what did I get in return? Occasional thank you texts that felt obligatory rather than sincere. Family dinners where my achievements were glossed over in 30 seconds, while Emily's latest waitressing job was discussed for an hour. Holidays where I was expected to bring expensive gifts, while my own struggles and challenges were met with distracted nods and quick subject changes to more important topics, meaning anything involving Emily or the hardware store. About 2 years ago, I started dating someone seriously for the first time in years. His name was Marcus, a high school teacher with a great sense of humor and a genuine interest in my work. He was kind, stable, supportive, everything I hadn't realized I was missing. When I brought him to meet my family, my mom spent the entire dinner asking him about his salary, his career prospects, whether teaching was really a sustainable profession. My dad barely spoke to him, clearly unimpressed that Marcus wasn't a business owner or someone in a more traditionally masculine profession. Emily monopolized the conversation with stories about her own dating disasters, turning what should have been my moment to share something important into another showcase for her drama. Marcus was gracious about it, but on the drive home he asked quietly, "Do they always treat you like you're invisible?" That question hit me harder than I expected because it came from someone outside the family dynamic, someone who could see clearly what I had been making excuses for my entire life. "They don't mean to," I said, defending them out of habit. But Marcus just squeezed my hand and said, "Nicole, people who love you don't make you feel invisible, even accidentally." Those words stayed with me, planting seeds of doubt that would eventually grow into full understanding. Marcus and I dated for 18 months before he proposed. I was genuinely happy, excited to build a life with someone who saw me and valued me for who I actually was. But when I told my family about the engagement, my mom's first response was, "Oh, well, we can't afford to help with the wedding, Nicole. You know that." I hadn't asked for money, hadn't even hinted at it, but her immediate assumption was that I expected them to contribute. What really stung was that 3 weeks later, I overheard my mom and Emily planning a big birthday party for Emily's 30th, talking about renting a venue and hiring a caterer, easily spending several $1,000s. Have you ever noticed how family always finds money for their favorites but has empty pockets for everyone else? Drop a comment if you've experienced this, because I need to know I'm not crazy for feeling hurt by this pattern. The engagement didn't last, not because of anything wrong with Marcus, but because the stress of planning a wedding while managing my family's constant demands became too much. They expected me to schedule everything around the hardware store's needs, to keep bailing them out of financial problems, to maintain all my duties as the family's backup plan, while also trying to build my own future. Marcus saw what was happening and tried to help me set boundaries, but I wasn't ready. I was still caught in the trap of believing that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved myself enough, they would finally see my value. Marcus deserved better than someone who couldn't put him first, so I ended the engagement. He was heartbroken, I was heartbroken, but I told myself it was for the best. Looking back now, I can see that I chose my family's dysfunction over my own happiness, and that choice cost me a genuine chance at love. After Marcus, I threw myself even deeper into work and into supporting my family. My graphic design agency was thriving. I had hired a team of 6 talented designers. We were winning major contracts with national brands, and the money was rolling in faster than I had ever imagined possible. But the more successful I became, the more my family seemed to need, as if my rising income was their personal emergency fund rather than the result of my hard work. My mom developed arthritis and needed ongoing treatment. I covered all her medical expenses that insurance didn't handle, easily $30,000 a year. My dad's hardware store faced new competition from an online retailer and needed to renovate to stay relevant. I funded a $60,000 remodel that included new shelving, updated signage, and a complete inventory refresh. Emily got into a car accident while driving uninsured and faced a lawsuit. I paid the settlement, $40,000, to make the problem disappear. Every single time I told myself this would be the last time, the final rescue before they got their act together and stopped needing me. And every single time I was wrong. The crises never stopped. They just changed shape, morphing from one emergency into another like some endless nightmare where I could never quite save enough to make everything okay. Then came the moment that should have woken me up but somehow didn't. Not immediately anyway. I had been working on a huge project, rebranding a regional restaurant chain with locations across the Pacific Northwest. It was the biggest contract of my career, worth $300,000, and it required months of intensive work, late nights, weekend hours, complete creative focus. I was proud of what my team and I had created, genuinely proud in a way I rarely allowed myself to feel. When the project wrapped and the client sent a glowing testimonial that I knew would bring in even more high-level work, I called my mom to share the news. I was excited, practically bubbling over with pride, wanting just once to have her celebrate my success the way she celebrated Emily's smallest accomplishments. "That's wonderful, honey," she said in that distracted tone I knew so well. Then, without missing a beat, "Listen, your dad and I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come over this weekend?" The important thing, it turned out, was that Emily had a brilliant new business idea. She wanted to open a boutique coffee shop with a vintage aesthetic, and she had found the perfect location in a trendy Portland neighborhood. She needed $100,000 to get started, and my parents thought it was a fantastic opportunity for me to invest in family. Emily's really found her calling this time, my dad said with absolute conviction, ignoring the trail of failed ventures and abandoned dreams that littered Emily's past. I sat there in their living room, listening to them pitch Emily's coffee shop like I was some venture capitalist rather than their daughter, and something inside me finally cracked. Not broke, but cracked, letting in the first rays of reality I had been blocking out for years. "What about my restaurant chain project?" I asked quietly. My mom looked confused, as if she couldn't remember what I had told her on the phone just 3 days earlier. "Oh, that. Yes, that's nice, dear. But this is about family helping family." I said no. For the first time in my adult life, I looked at my parents and my sister and said, "No, I'm not investing in the coffee shop." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily's face went red with anger and embarrassment. My dad's expression hardened into something cold and disapproving. My mom looked genuinely shocked, as if I had slapped her across the face instead of simply declining to hand over $100,000. "After everything we've done for you," my dad said, his voice low and dangerous. I almost laughed at the absurdity of that statement, but I held it together. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad?" I asked, keeping my voice calm and level. "I paid for my own education. I built my business from nothing. I've given this family over $400,000 in the past 6 years alone. What have you done for me?" My mom jumped in, playing the role she always played, the peacemaker who somehow always took everyone's side except mine. "Nicole, that's not fair. We've always supported you emotionally. We've been here for you." But her words rang hollow because I could count on one hand the times they had actually shown up for something important to me, and I'd need a calculator to tally the times I had shown up for them. Emily finally spoke, her voice dripping with entitlement and hurt feelings. "I can't believe how selfish you've become, Nicole. Success has changed you and not in a good way. We're family. Family helps each other." I looked at my younger sister, this woman who had never held a job longer than 8 months, who had never paid back a single dollar of the money I had given her, who had never once asked about my life or my struggles or my dreams, and I saw her clearly for the first time. She wasn't my sister in any meaningful sense. She was a stranger who happened to share my DNA, someone who had been enabled and coddled into a permanent state of arrested development while I was expected to be the adult, the responsible one, the eternal safety net. And my parents had created this dynamic, choosing favorites and assigning roles before Emily and I were old enough to understand what was happening. I left their house that day with a strange mix of emotions churning in my chest: guilt, anger, relief, sadness, all tangled together into something I couldn't quite name. My parents didn't call for 2 weeks, their version of punishment for my disobedience. Emily sent me several nasty texts calling me selfish and heartless, saying I had turned my back on family when they needed me most. The emotional manipulation was thick enough to cut with a knife. But something had shifted inside me during that conversation in their living room. For the first time, I had chosen myself over their demands, and the world hadn't ended. My business didn't collapse, my life didn't fall apart, and I didn't feel the crushing guilt I had expected. Instead, I felt lighter, freer, like I had been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was there until I set it down. I started seeing a therapist, something I should have done years earlier. Dr. Sarah Chen was a specialist in family dynamics and codependency, and our sessions became a safe space to unpack the toxic patterns I had been living with my entire life. "You've been programmed to believe that your value lies in what you provide rather than who you are," she told me in our 3rd session. Those words unlocked something I had been unable to articulate myself. Through therapy, I began to understand that my family's treatment of me wasn't about my shortcomings or failures. It was about their own dysfunction, their inability to see people as anything other than the roles they assigned them. I was the responsible one, the provider, the backup plan. Emily was the fragile one, the creative spirit, the one who needed protecting. Those roles were set in stone, and any attempt to change them was met with resistance and punishment. Dr. Chen helped me start setting boundaries, real boundaries that I actually enforced. When my mom called asking for money for a new treatment her doctor recommended, I said, "I'm not able to help with that right now." The shocked silence on the other end of the line was almost funny. She had never heard me say no to a medical expense before, and she clearly didn't know how to respond. Over the next 6 months, I gradually reduced my financial support to my family. Not out of spite or revenge, but out of self-preservation and a growing understanding that I was enabling their dysfunction rather than helping them. My dad's hardware store would have to succeed or fail on its own merits. Emily would have to face the consequences of her choices, without me cushioning every fall. My mom would have to work within her insurance coverage instead of treating my bank account as supplemental health insurance. The reduction in money brought an immediate increase in hostility. My parents stopped inviting me to family dinners. Emily unfriended me on social media and told mutual friends I had abandoned the family in their time of need. Even extended family members, aunts and uncles who barely knew me, felt entitled to call and lecture me about my duties as a daughter and sister. The message was clear. I was only valuable to them when I was useful. But here's what they didn't know. What I had been keeping secret even from Dr. Chen at first, because saying it out loud felt too real, too permanent. I had been in negotiations to sell my graphic design agency to a national marketing firm that wanted to expand their West Coast presence. The deal had been in the works for almost a year, complicated and delicate, requiring careful planning and absolute discretion. The sale closed on a Tuesday in late March, exactly 6 months after I had first said no to funding Emily's coffee shop. The final price was $2.3 million, more money than I had ever imagined having, more than enough to secure my future and never have to worry about money again. I didn't tell my family because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. They would see that number and suddenly every emergency would become more expensive. Every crisis would require a bigger rescue. They would feel entitled to that money in a way they had never felt entitled to my salary from the business, as if selling my company was some windfall lottery win, rather than the result of a decade of strategic planning and hard work building something valuable. I started making plans for my new life. I wanted to travel, to see parts of the world I had only dreamed about while working 80-hour weeks building my agency. I wanted to maybe go back to school, get a master's degree in something completely impractical just for the joy of learning. I wanted to figure out who Nicole was when she wasn't defined by her family's needs and demands. The marketing firm that bought my agency asked me to stay on as a consultant for 6 months to help with the transition, and I agreed. It gave me structure while I figured out what came next, and the consulting fee was generous enough to fund my travel plans without touching the money from the sale. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was living for myself rather than merely existing as a support system for others. My family's calls and texts became less frequent as they realized I wasn't going to cave to their demands. My dad left a voicemail saying he was disappointed in the person I had become, that money and success had corrupted my values. The irony of him saying that while simultaneously demanding my money was apparently lost on him. My mom sent sad text messages about how distant I had become, how family was supposed to stick together through hard times. Emily was the most aggressive in her attempts to manipulate me back into my old role. She would call crying about some new crisis, some disaster that only I could solve, and when I held firm on my boundaries, she would switch to anger, calling me selfish and cold-hearted. "You were never really part of this family anyway," she said during one particularly vicious phone call. "You always thought you were better than us." That accusation stung because it was so completely backwards from reality. I had never thought I was better than them. I had spent my entire life trying to prove I was good enough for them, worthy of their love and respect and acknowledgement. But in Emily's twisted logic, my refusal to continue funding her lifestyle was evidence of arrogance rather than self-respect. Then came that Thursday in late September, the rainy afternoon that changed everything. I was working from my apartment, reviewing design mock-ups from the marketing firm, when my phone buzzed with my mom's text. "Don't call me, come over. We're done." I read those words 3 times, trying to understand what had triggered this final rejection. We hadn't fought recently. I hadn't refused any specific request. There was no obvious catalyst for such a definitive ending. But as I sat there with the rain drumming against my window, I realized the catalyst didn't matter. This was who they were, who they had always been. When I was useful to them, I was family. When I set boundaries and chose myself, I was the enemy. The relationship had always been conditional. I just hadn't wanted to see it clearly until that moment when the condition was stated so bluntly. I typed back, "I get it," and felt something shift inside my chest, something that felt like grief and relief mixed together in equal measure. I wasn't going to chase them anymore, wasn't going to beg for scraps of affection or acceptance. If they were done with me, then I was free. Free to live my life without their constant demands, free to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial transactions, free to discover who I really was underneath all those years of trying to earn their love. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail, watching the calls pile up from my mom, my dad, Emily, even a few extended family members who I barely knew. I didn't listen to the messages right away. Instead, I sat with my decision, testing how it felt to finally let go of the family I had been clinging to despite all evidence that they didn't want me unless I was paying for the privilege. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine Marcus had given me for my birthday 2 years ago, before our engagement fell apart. I had been saving it for a special occasion, though I could never quite define what would qualify as special enough. Sitting alone in my apartment, rain still falling outside, phone still buzzing with ignored calls, I decided that freedom qualified as special enough. The voicemails, when I finally listened to them the next morning, were exactly what I expected. My dad's was angry and accusatory. "You cut off all the payments, Nicole. Your mother's medication, the store rent, Emily's car insurance. What the hell do you think you're doing?" His tone made it clear he saw my financial support not as a generous gift, but as an obligation I was failing to meet. My mom's messages were manipulative and guilt-laden. "I don't understand what I did to deserve this, honey. I'm your mother. How can you abandon me when I need you most? What happened to the sweet girl I raised?" The sweet girl she raised, I thought bitterly, was the one who learned to sacrifice herself to earn love that should have been freely given. Emily's voicemails escalated from pleading to threatening. "You can't just cut us off like this, Nicole. We're family. We have rights. If you don't fix this, we'll take legal action. We'll sue you for the money you owe us." The absurdity of claiming I owed them money after giving them over $400,000 would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. But there was one voicemail that actually made me pause, and it was from my Aunt Linda, my mom's younger sister who I had always liked, but rarely saw. "Nicole, honey, I don't know what happened between you and your parents, but I want you to know I'm proud of you." Her voice was warm and genuine. "I've watched them take advantage of your generosity for years, and I've bitten my tongue because it wasn't my place. But if you've finally set boundaries, good for you. You deserve better than how they've treated you." That message brought tears to my eyes because it was the first time anyone in my extended family had acknowledged what I had been experiencing. Aunt Linda saw it, understood it, and validated my feelings in a way my own parents never had. I saved that voicemail and deleted all the others without responding to any of them. Over the next 2 weeks, the calls and texts gradually decreased as my family realized I wasn't going to cave to their pressure. But the silence from them was actually louder than their demands had been, a clear statement that without my money, I had no value to them. That realization hurt, but it also clarified everything I had been confused about for years. I started planning my exit from Portland. The city held too many memories, too many places where I might accidentally run into my family, too much history weighing me down. I had always wanted to live somewhere with better weather, maybe Southern California or Arizona, somewhere I could start completely fresh without the baggage of who I had been for the past 32 years. My consulting contract with the marketing firm was wrapping up, and they had offered me a permanent position at their headquarters in San Diego. The salary was excellent, the work was interesting, and most importantly, it was 2 states away from my family. I accepted the position and started making plans to move, selling my Portland apartment and most of my furniture, keeping only the things that mattered to me personally. Dr. Chen and I had our final session before my move, and she gave me something I hadn't expected, genuine optimism about my future. "You've done incredibly hard work over these past months, Nicole. You've broken patterns that were set before you could walk. That takes real courage for ya," she told me. "Don't let anyone, including yourself, minimize what you've accomplished by setting boundaries and choosing your own well-being." As I packed up my life in Portland, I felt lighter than I had in years. No more emergency calls demanding money. No more family dinners where I was invisible. No more pretending that conditional love was the same as real love. I was choosing myself, maybe for the first time ever, and it felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I moved to San Diego in early November, settling into a beautiful condo with an ocean view that still takes my breath away every morning. The marketing firm's headquarters was everything they had promised: creative, collaborative, full of talented people who actually valued my expertise. I made friends quickly, genuine friends who liked me for who I was, rather than what I could provide them. 3 months into my new life, I got a Facebook message from Aunt Linda. She had heard through the family grapevine that I had moved away, and she wanted to let me know what was happening back in Portland. My dad's hardware store had finally closed for good, unable to compete without the constant infusions of cash I had been providing. My parents had downsized to a smaller apartment and were struggling financially. Emily's coffee shop, which she had somehow managed to open using money borrowed from friends and distant relatives, had failed within 6 months. She was back to waiting tables and living with our parents in their cramped apartment, all 3 of them apparently miserable and blaming me for their situation. According to Aunt Linda, I had become the villain in their story, The selfish daughter who abandoned her family when they needed her most. Reading Linda's message, I felt a pang of something. Not quite guilt, but maybe sadness for the family we could have been if they had been capable of seeing me as a whole person, rather than a resource to exploit. But mostly, I felt relief that I had escaped before they dragged me down with them into their self-created disasters. 6 months after my move, something unexpected happened. I ran into Marcus at a design conference in Los Angeles. We stared at each other for a long moment, both of us clearly shocked by the coincidence. He looked good, older maybe, but good. We grabbed coffee and talked for 3 hours, catching up on our lives since the engagement ended. He had moved to Los Angeles, was teaching at a prestigious private school, and had recently ended a relationship that hadn't worked out. Marcus and I started talking regularly after that conference. Long phone conversations that reminded me why I had fallen for him in the first place. He understood what I had been through with my family because he had witnessed it firsthand. More importantly, he saw the person I had become since setting boundaries and choosing myself, and he liked who he saw. We started dating again, cautiously at first, both of us aware of how badly things had ended before. But this time was different because I was different. I wasn't the woman desperately trying to earn her family's approval while neglecting her own needs. I was someone who knew her worth, who could set boundaries, who chose herself and the people who genuinely cared about her. A year after reconnecting with Marcus, he proposed again. This time I said yes without hesitation, without worrying about how my family would react or what demands they might make. We got married in a small ceremony on a San Diego beach, surrounded by friends who had become the family I chose rather than the family I was born into. Aunt Linda was the only person from my biological family who attended, and her presence meant everything to me. My parents and Emily never reached out to congratulate me or ask about my wedding. Their silence was its own kind of statement, a final confirmation that I had made the right choice in walking away. Sometimes I wonder if they ever think about me, if they ever regret how they treated me, if they ever acknowledge their role in destroying our relationship. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. I built a beautiful life for myself, one based on mutual respect, genuine love, and relationships that don't require me to pay for the privilege of being valued. Marcus and I are talking about starting a family, and I'm determined that my children will never have to earn my love or prove their worth through sacrifice. They'll know from day one that they are valuable simply because they exist, not because of what they can provide. Looking back on that rainy Thursday when my mom texted, "We're done," I can see it clearly now as the beginning of my real life rather than the end of something precious. That text message was a gift wrapped in pain, permission to finally let go of people who were never going to see me the way I needed to be seen. It freed me to discover who I was underneath all those years of trying to be enough for people who would never be satisfied. If you're listening to this story and recognizing yourself in it, if you have family members who only value you for what you can give them, I want you to know that you deserve better. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect and genuine love. You deserve to be seen and valued for who you are, not what you provide. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who will never appreciate your worth. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. Choosing yourself isn't abandonment, it's survival. And blood doesn't make someone family if they treat you like an ATM instead of a human being. The family I've built through choice, Marcus, Aunt Linda, my close friends, they've shown me what real love looks like. It's not conditional, it's not transactional, and it doesn't require me to set myself on fire to keep others warm. I invested over $400,000 in my biological family over the years, and I got nothing back except pain and manipulation. But I invested in myself, in therapy, in boundaries, in a new life, and that investment paid returns I couldn't have imagined. I'm happy now, genuinely happy in a way I never was when I was trying to earn love that should have been freely given. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to choose between your family and your own well-being? Have you ever walked away from toxic relationships even when everyone told you that you owed them loyalty? Share your story in the comments below, because I know I'm not alone in this experience. And maybe your story will help someone else find the courage to choose themselves. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own boundaries and relationships, please share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future stories about finding strength in difficult situations. And remember, you are valuable not because of what you give to others, but simply because you exist. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you write your own ending to whatever situation you're facing. You deserve love, respect, and happiness, and sometimes that means walking away from people who can't give you those things. Choose yourself, always.